about the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampires, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hi everybody, this is Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show on the Paranormal UK Radio network. I'm your host, Irene and Mark, and with me tonight, as usual, is my co-host, Mark Johnson.
Not only did you remember my name, you didn't refer to me as your T-boy this time.
Oh, I know, I'm terrible, aren't I?
What, did you replace me?
Hang on. Sorry, people, my T-boy and runabout, Mark Johnson.
Mm-hmm. You should find somebody to get your tea for you now. Tell Gertie to start bringing the tea. Of course, she'll start chewing on the cup.
Yeah, she will. She'll drink the tea. I caught her lapping up my coffee the other day.
Oh, really?
For who doesn't know, Gertie is the paranormal pup of the mascot of Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Yep. British
Bulldog puppy.
And too cute to live, so.
Yeah. Okay, Mark. So what's been going on?
Busy, as usual. Well, I premiered my new show, Shamanic Reality, last week, and been getting some really good feedback on it from people. They kind of like the take on that show. So we'll be preparing new shows moving forward. I've got some guests lined up, so I'm really excited about that.
Okay, that's brilliant. And, of course, we got a new show coming on as well, haven't we? Another new show.
And which one is that?
Serial Spirits.
That's right.
Serial Spirits, yeah.
Yes. That should be interesting because they'll be talking more on not only the paranormal, but also on true life crime, murders, serial killers.
Serial killers and all the gory.
All the gory bits. So we have the new show. Everything's going good on the paranormal front. We're in October, starting next week. And, of course, this is my favorite time of year, the Halloween season. Here on the east coast of the U.S., we're definitely in fall weather mode, being cold and rainy, and the leaves are already starting to turn. You have leaves turning over there in the UK yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet?
No.
Good Lord.
Well, I suppose they are... Well, no, they're not really. So maybe air temperature's a little bit more milder than yours. I don't know.
Probably.
I honestly don't know. But going on the leaves out in my drive, no, fantastic still.
Oh, well, jolly good.
Yeah. I suppose it depends which part of the country you're in, really. You know? Just how cold it is. More than likely up the north, it would be that they're turning. But down here in the south at the moment, yeah, they're still green and healthy looking and hanging on those trees.
Well, from what I hear, they're calling for a harsh winter both there and here. So I'm not looking forward to winter this year.
Oh, goody. Snow.
Yep, you get to go out and play in the snow with Gertie.
Yep, and all the other dogs. Fantastic. That's just what I like. I do like virgin snow. I get up in the morning, there's not a footprint anywhere, and I go flying through it.
That's not the only virgin thing you like. But anyway.
Yeah, Virgin Airlines, I do like them.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, carry on. Yeah,
extra virgin
right,
olive oil always comes in handy in the kitchen.
Virgin olive oil, yeah. I always use virgin olive oil.
There you go. There you go. Yeah, I just have to say before we get into the show tonight,
that's a dirty talk about virgins, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yeah, all done now. I just wanted to mention there's a new documentary that just came out. For those people who have read the book or heard about the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah, the book 20 years ago, The Hunt for the Skinwalker, written by George Knapp and Colm Kelleher, came out detailing all the strange paranormal activities surrounding this ranch in Utah. People have talked about it all over the years. Well, there's a new documentary that just came out where this filmmaker collaborated with George Knapp. And for those who don't know George Knapp, he's a television personality out of Las Vegas who does a lot of exposés, and he's put a lot of spotlight on the Skinwalker Ranch over the years. He's the first one to bring Area 51 and Bob Lazar to life, and he actually has footage that they shot back at the ranch back in the day, and they never made it public, and they incorporated a lot of that into this documentary so-called Hunt for the Skinwalker. And I just watched it the other night, and it's really interesting. But then at the same time, it's like if you read the book, then you're not seeing anything new because they really don't. You could tell he was holding back a lot. He would talk some, and then the guy who's making the documentary would ask him questions, and he goes, "No, I can't talk about that." So there's like so much about that ranch that's still a big mystery.
I'm always suspicious of people that turn around and say, "I can't talk about that."
Yeah, well, you wonder why. You wonder why.
Yeah, maybe because they haven't really got something to say.
Maybe. That's possible. Always a possibility. You know, if you're looking for something spooky to watch for Halloween about supposed true life paranormal activity, it's worth a check out. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, but was it good? Is it worth really putting the television on?
It's worth the rental. Especially
it's rent. Wait a minute, you have to rent this thing?
Well, yeah, because it's a movie. You can rent it through Amazon or I believe iTunes and a couple of other different platforms.
Oh, I see. And the book was written 20 years ago?
The original book, Hunt for the Skinwalker, which goes into a lot of detail about not only the family that bought the ranch, but then when Robert Bigelow bought the ranch and had his NIDS team, the National Institute for Discovery Science, go out onto the ranch, and they did over 10 years of research on the ranch and the activity there, and they had some pretty wild experiences. Yeah.
Okay, then. So there you go. That's something to watch over the Halloween, then, if you want to pay for the rental of it.
There you go.
Not that I'm tight or anything, but I don't pay for it. I got Amazon Prime. If it's not on Amazon Prime, I don't watch it.
Yeah, it's not like we're not paying enough for Amazon Prime, right?
Well, that's it, yeah.
And Netflix and Hulu and all the other. Everybody wants you to pay now for their television shows.
That's true. Very, very true. So, what else has been going on? Anything else, or can we get on with our guest?
I think we can get on with our guest in the show right now.
Okay, brilliant. Do you want to introduce our guest?
Certainly. We're talking tonight with author Clarissa Vasquez. Now, Clarissa wrote a book along with her co-author Chris Carr called Debunking Common Paranormal Myths, exploring... Whoa. I think this might be misspelled here on the thing. Psychosomatic pareidolia. Did I say that right, Clarissa?
You got the pareidolia right.
Yeah, and it is. It's psychosomatic pareidolia.
Oh, there's an extra A on the Amazon listing, so you might want to look into that.
We're actually having an email battle with Amazon and our publisher right now because the publisher is saying, well, that title is locked into the ISBN database. There's no way we can change it. You have to release a second edition. And we're like, well, the first edition's only been out for a few weeks. Why are you saying we have to re-release it? And so it's been there's a big tug of war going on right now between Amazon and our publisher and the two of us because somebody, it appears, had fat fingers when they were entering our title into the ISBN database.
Yeah, welcome to the joys of dealing with Amazon.
We know about that, don't we, Mark?
Oh, good Lord, yes.
Trouble we've had with our books.
Yes. So, Clarissa, welcome to the program. And now I'm going to admit I'm interested in the angle that you're using on this book with debunking common paranormal myths. First and foremost, before we really get into the book, can you tell us and our audience a little bit about yourself and how you got to the point of not only looking into the paranormal, but debunking paranormal myths?
Sure. I've been researching reports of paranormal phenomena, predominantly ghostly phenomena, for coming up on 23 years now. So I've been doing it since before the TV shows were popular, since before it was cool, I guess. In 2004, I, along with a friend of mine, started the Colorado Coalition of Paranormal Investigators, which has been going strong for 14 years now. We're 13 members strong, yay! And so it's kind of morphed into one of those things where a personal experience 20-something years ago turned into something that I eat, sleep, breathe, and love. Co-author and I, we were having a discussion on some of the things that really aggravate us when it comes to the quote-unquote evidence being presented as paranormal in nature to the public. And we found a common thread in a lot of it, in that people go into a purportedly paranormal setting, whether it's ghostology, ufology, cryptozoology, whatever you're researching, people go into these settings expecting to have some sort of paranormal experience. And that expectation is what brings about the psychosomatic, and then their brains essentially play tricks on them, whether they see a shadow, or they hear a noise, or they think they see something. And pareidolia, by clinical definition, is the brain's ability to try to make a rational conclusion out of incomplete data. Really good example is when you look up in the clouds and you see cloud formations. Obviously there's no bunny rabbit in the clouds, but it's the brain's ability to take those incomplete pieces of data and try to make a rational explanation out of it. And that's textbook pareidolia. And so we were able to develop this clinical definition for something that happens very regularly. No one is immune to it. And in fact, in the book, we give real world experience and how it is affected by psychosomatic pareidolia. And, we hope that by shining a light on this phenomena, people will start paying attention to what is going on around them, and they will be able to better debunk what they are experiencing. And we're not saying that ghosts and cryptids and UFOs and ETs aren't real. We're not saying that. What we're saying is that, this book and the knowledge that it contains is a tool to help people present better material to the world that'll be more difficult to dispute, because they've actually paid attention to their surroundings. They've recognized that this is it's a legitimate phenomena, and that nobody's immune to it.
That sounds really good. I'm going to get this book, Clarissa.
Yes, you're talking right up Irene's alley, because she's as much paranormal as she's experienced in her life. She's also a big skeptic on a lot of things too. So you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, I do like to debunk it all, But there are some things, obviously, you can't debunk, and that's it.
Well, no, and I mean, I understand what you're talking about, Clarissa, with going these groups who see, let's say, a famous location on television that's supposed to be haunted. They go rushing out there, they schedule an investigation, and then, of course, they're jumping at every shadow, thinking it's paranormal when
Right.
there's nothing really going on.
Right.
And I know I've gone to a few locations that have been on TV shows, and some have been very quiet and disappointing. And I'm going to admit there have been a couple that seem to have been off the hook with evidence the couple of times we went there. And of course, we also look at all of our evidence, and we want to make sure that we're debunking everything before we put it out there to the public, because and that still doesn't mean people aren't going to like tear you up for something if they don't want to believe it or accept it, or they're saying, oh no, it's this or that. But
of course, there's always going to be skeptics. Mark, when you look at it, there are still people out there that are convinced the earth is flat. There are people that are convinced that we never walked on the moon. Elvis is still alive. Things like that. There are always going to be naysayers. The objective with this book is to open people's eyes and to open their minds to understand that not everything they encounter is paranormal in nature.
Yeah, well, a lot of these groups, Clarissa, they go to these places all hyped up, all ready for it. They're in an old building or something that's got no heating and it's cold anyway. So straight away, the temperature's dropped,
Right.
So, it's what they're expecting something. So, like you say, they jump at every little thing. If a light bulb flickers because the light bulb is on its way out and about to blow, they still think it's something to do paranormal.
Right.
Mm.
Well, I've gone to a couple of times. I've been to Rolling Hills Asylum up in Bethany, New York. Now, that's been on several, shows, from everything from Ghost Hunters to Ghost Adventures to you name it. And the couple of times that we went, we actually had a lot of what seemed to be a lot of activity going on. But at the same time, a lot of the activity, the way I approach it is, just because I may hear some strange noises or weird sounds coming from the building doesn't mean it's paranormal. We were encountering something, especially up on the third floor one night, these taps and raps around the ceiling. And we were trying to determine if maybe, because the heat of the day and the building was cooling off at night and was settling, it almost sounded like water going through the pipes, but there's no water in the building. The water is shut off. So can I sit there and tell you that's paranormal? Absolutely not. It's an old building and it's making creaking noises. Sometimes we would hear these strange sounds that it would almost sound like a scream or something. And at the same time, it almost had an animal quality. So we were checking outside to make sure that because there's a lot of farmland around there, any types of animals or birds or something that could be making sounds that can be misinterpreted. Now, of course, I did hear a human conversation down the hallway one time, and I was the only one there. So, I clearly heard what I heard. I didn't, unfortunately, catch it on any audio, but we hadn't even started investigating yet. I was just setting up a camera, and I heard voices down the hallway. Almost sounded like children, and there was nothing there. Now, again, I'm one of the first people that won't sit there and point out, see, I heard ghosts of the paranormal, because I think that too often we jump to too many conclusions. I heard something I can't explain, and that's about as far as I can take it.
Right. And so, as you were explaining, just a minute ago, you were already in a purported haunted location. Mm-hmm. So you already had the psychosomatic aspect in play. You were already set up to experience something potentially paranormal in nature. And then, you began to hear things. And that is really the job of any paranormal researcher, is to try to differentiate between, okay, is this naturally occurring or is it potentially paranormal in nature? And I personally, and I know my co-author Chris agrees with me, that is an area of the field that is very, very lacking. All too often people are way too eager to, post their findings online or, on social media, or, present it to the local press and say, well, we went to this creepy location and this is what we found. And there's a very rational, naturally occurring explanation for what they experienced. And it really kind of shines a negative light on paranormal investigation as a whole, because the hardcore naysayers are going to go, yeah, well, that's bunk because it was this or it was this or what have you. So by recognizing that psychosomatic pareidolia is a legitimate phenomena and no one is immune to it, that will help investigators present more credible data to the world. Case in point, back in August, Chris, my co-author, he and I investigated the S.K. Pierce Mansion in Gardner, Massachusetts. And the building, gorgeous, gorgeous old Victorian mansion, and they're in the process of renovating it and turning it into a bed and breakfast. And we were in some of the bedrooms, and all of the bedrooms have these beautiful, beautiful beds with these very ornate headboards. And in the dark, some of these headboards, if you looked at them just right, kind of looked like someone was standing on the bed, kind of hunched over, looking at you menacingly. And I pointed it out, and I'm like, hey, Chris, psychosomatic pareidolia, that headboard looks like somebody, hunched over looking at us, very menacingly, very aggressively. And when I pointed it out, he saw it too. We had a good laugh and we were able to move on instead of, taking photo after photo and presenting it to the world going, do you see this? There was a spirit in the headboard.
Yeah, but Clarissa, also with these things, like you see something on the wall or something, if that light is in the right direction to hit it, then that's same sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, that's where the pareidolia part of it kicks in. And it's our brains trying to make rational conclusions out of incomplete data. We don't have adequate lighting, or the lighting is at just the right angle that our brains are not able to fully and consciously recognize what is there. And so it makes an assumption.
Well, it's like also, the main thing that we see and absorb mostly during our daytime is faces. So you look at something like you look at a dirty window, you see faces in it.
Yes.
Because that's your mind is creating faces because, it's a fascinating subject. It actually is. I like pareidolia because if I'm bored, I will look at something like if I'm laying out in the garden sunbathing, I always look at the clouds and look at the islands and the dolphin over there and this one there and that, Right. And if I'm sitting in the dentist or something and he's got wallpaper, I see all sorts of things in the wallpaper or on the walls and things, but I know it's all pareidolia.
Well, the old saying.
And it does, I'll tell you, it stops you being bored.
Yeah. The old saying, simple minds are easily amused.
Yes, yes. Okay, yes. Slap later.
Okay. Yeah. You're going to have to put up with this for the rest of the show. I'm sorry about that, Clarissa.
But also, am I right? You also get pareidolia of the ears. Yes. Like EVPs, you can have an EVP, you can let 20 people listen to it, and majority of them say it's something totally different to the way you think it is.
Oh, God.
Or what it's saying.
Yeah, they're so guilty of that on the TV show Ghost Adventures, which I've openly admitted it's my guilty pleasure. It's my favorite show. But, at the same time, I look at what these guys do, and half the time they have an EVP, and it's like, oh, my God, did you hear what it said? No, not really. No, it said this. No, it sounds like a bunch of to me.
But I've even done that. I've tested people out with that, and I've let them hear an EVP, and I think it's saying one thing or another, and the people that I've tested out say it's totally different. They're saying each one's saying it's something different. Okay, they're not in the same room with each other, so they're not feeding each other or anything. And then I've put an EVP in front of them, and I'm saying to them, listen to this, he's saying this. And they're all going, oh, yeah, it's the same EVP.
Yeah.
Done a few days later. I had to retest them on it a few days later because I've already implanted it into their head what this thing is saying. So when you see people say, or they put EVPs out on Facebook and they say, it's saying so-and-so's just been down the shops and bought a pint of milk. Okay. Then they're all blooming listening to it and they're all saying, oh, yeah, I can hear it. I can hear it. I can hear it. It's fascinating.
I did an investigation once with another team that I was friendly with many years ago. And we were investigating this old Victorian mansion here in New Jersey. And she had, this one investigator had captured what she thought was this EVP. And she sent it to me all excited. And I listened to it and I'm going, when was this recorded? And she tells me when. So, well, I had video running right then. So I went back and looked at my video camera. And you know what? I found out it was her. She had said something because she thought she felt like a cold spot and she felt all tingly. And she goes, oh my God, feel that, feel that. Well, it wound up on her cheap, older Sony recorders, which are among the worst in terms of sound quality. And she thought her own voice was an EVP. And I even took the clip of the video and sent it to her saying, no, this is you. And she still refused to believe it. It's like, because she so desperately wanted it to be a real EVP. It's like, no, sorry, it's your voice. And, but people want to...
and that's part of the problem is that people are so hungry for those experiences. They want so badly to experience something paranormal, whether it's for social validation, so they can go out to the world and say, look what I captured, or whether it's for personal validation, so they can say, okay, this was not a total waste of my time. People want so badly to have that experience. And unfortunately, it leads to a lot of false positives in the community.
And that's part of the problem with this so-called community. Most of the community these days is people who've watched one too many ghost shows, and they think it's cool to go put together a team and go out and try to investigate and have experiences themselves. And usually, most of these teams, duplicate the worst behavior from some of these shows, and they're doing it all wrong. And they open themselves up not only to not catching real evidence, but could also open themselves up to a world of hurt too.
Yeah, absolutely. You go into a potentially paranormal situation and you're emulating the goofball in the t-shirt that's 3 sizes too small, and you're shouting out into the darkness, calling, whom or whatever may be there a yellow-bellied sapsucker. You could be making a potentially dangerous situation worse. And if I were to, Mark, get in your face and say, you will talk to me, you will show yourself to me, you will do, that's not going to make you want to talk to me, is it? But if I, calmly walk up to you and say, hi, Mark, my name's Clarissa. Or if I don't know your name, say, hi, my name's Clarissa, what's your name? That's going to make you more inclined to want to talk to me, as opposed to walking up to you and calling you a yellow-bellied sapsucker and demanding that you speak to me.
Yep.
I love that, yellow-bellied sapsucker. I'm going to have to call Mark that. Okay.
I got a few names to come back to you too, so just be warned. Anyway, well, yeah, that's one of the things I learned many years ago is about approaching it with respect. You get a lot more results being respectful than you do being combative, and sometimes you don't know what you're combating either. And let's face it, it's there's, as we've mentioned a lot on this show, I'm not always going into a place thinks it's haunted by the ghosts of people who've died and haven't moved on, because sometimes you're dealing with things that we don't fully understand. And do you really want to piss it off?
Yeah, absolutely. You don't know who or what you're dealing with. And, my grandmother used to say, you attract more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. And so, by being respectful and, just calmly, respectfully, explaining, I'm not here to harm you. I just want to talk. I want to learn more about you, is more likely to yield results than, shouting at the top of your lungs and demanding that whom or whatever is there interact with you.
Well, it's only polite, isn't it? Why shouldn't you be polite to the dead? You're polite to the English? To the English.
The English are always polite.
Yeah, we are. We queue up at the bus stop. Okay. Right, I'm flipping here, aren't I? I am flipping. No, you're polite to people. If you're polite to people, well, you've got to be polite to people. If you didn't, you get punched in the nose. So why shouldn't you just, same thing with the dead, isn't it?
Right.
And things you don't know, mind
Right.
you, I can't really say that, can I, Mark? Because what's my words when something gets on my nerves?
It starts with an F and ends with off.
Yeah. Yeah, if I got something playing up and getting on my nerves, that's what happens. The hand goes up in front of it and boom, F off.
The ghosts get the hand.
Yeah. But but you're right, Clarissa. If I'm going on an investigation, okay, then I'm going to be polite to the spirits. I'm not going to go in there starting shouting and screaming and God knows what else. That I'm getting them all rolled up so they chuck cups at me and things like that. I'm not that daft, There is no way. And you're right, you won't get the interaction you really want.
Yeah, and if you do get interaction, chances are it's going to be negative interaction, in the form of having things tossed at you, or possibly being scratched, or or even pushed down. If I was a ghost, Mark, and you were rude to me, Mark.
Yeah.
If I was taking a tumble down the stairs.
Yeah. If I was a ghost and someone was rude to me, I'd just turn around and say, I ain't talking to you. And I'll go off and sulk. Or and then wait for them to turn their back and chuck something at them.
Or get dragged up the stairs like what's his name in Most Haunted.
I think they started all this being abusive. I'm sure they did.
Well, and they're also started all the faking too. So.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the stone throwing and, I can't talk about them. I'm ashamed.
Well, Clarissa, let me ask, within your book, what are some of the other types of examples of paranormal pareidolia that you've encountered or you think that these people are doing when they're investigating?
The book runs the gamut from everything from the equipment that we use, proper usage of the equipment, which can lead to false positives, to, there's an entire chapter on the dreaded orbs, which we have a really nifty acronym for it, that orbs stands for ordinary random bits of stuff. And we talk about audio pareidolia, and we even go so far as we did a chapter on stigmata and Marian apparitions.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm curious on how stigmata could be considered pareidolia.
When you are encountering the extremely devout, just as with any other potentially paranormal situation, any scratch or bump or bite or blister, that person could interpret that to be the onset of stigmata.
Now, when you're talking about stigmata in the traditional religious sense, like, bleeding from hands or whatnot.
Hands, feet, the abdomen, yes.
What about those people who think they get scratched? Scratching seems to be a very common occurrence for a lot of people. And, speaking in the 18 years that I've been investigating, the only scratch I ever got was, I rubbed up against a piece of wood that had a nail coming out of it.
Right. And and like I've said a couple of times now on the show, nobody is immune to it. And I even had an experience a few years ago where I was on an investigation and, a little while later, my back started burning and, lifted my shirt, had another investigator look at it. Sure enough, there were scratches on my back. And so instead of going, oh my gosh, I was just attacked, I started retracing my steps. And I remembered that I had been crawling around underneath this house. I had been in the crawl space of this house and had inadvertently caught my back on an exposed beam in this crawl space. And that was what had scratched my back. Now, at the time, it didn't occur to me. It didn't hurt at the time, but as the air got to that fresh scratch and everything, it began to burn and sting a little bit, and which prompted the inspection. And sure enough, there were a couple of little scratches there, but I was able to debunk it in a sense by retracing my steps and remembering that, oh yeah, I had been in the crawl space and I had accidentally rubbed my back against this exposed beam, and sure enough, there were a couple of screws there sticking out of the beam, and that was what caused my superficial injury. So, instead of jumping to conclusions and going, oh my gosh, I was scratched, there's malevolent energy in this building, or it's a demon, or what have you, I was able to, correctly identify the cause of the problem.
And sometimes you also have to identify certain people in your group who maybe shouldn't be there in the first place. And, I admit several years back, we had this young man join our group, and he was very enthusiastic, and we did an investigation, and he claimed he was scratched. And we realized he went to the bathroom just before that. And we realized he scratched himself, and he had done a few other things with some lying that we caught him in, looking for attention, and we had to let him go. So sometimes people just wanting attention will do something, saying, "Oh my God, hey, look what happened to me."
Yeah. And, and unfortunately that happens. And it's not just in the paranormal community. That's going to be, pretty much everywhere you go there, there's going to be someone seeking some sort of attention for something. And it's sad, but it happens. And so again, that's another reason, to try to debunk what people are experiencing.
Now, when you're talking about certain types of equipment, now, is there any type of equipment that you and Chris feel is, like, let me put it bluntly, worthless? Because there's a lot of equipment out there that people, are all the rage about, and you go and you spend your money on this stuff, and some of it I definitely question.
Yeah, I think the one item that we discussed the most in the equipment chapter are the phone apps, the phone and tablet apps that claim that they can detect ghosts or can detect extraterrestrials. And first of all, phones and tablets are not mechanically designed to do what the apps claim they can do. They cannot detect EMF. If anything, they emit high levels of EMF. That's why the FDA is daily putting out new warnings about, prolonged cell phone and tablet use. They cannot, they cannot detect with a radar sweep, unless you're locked into a radar signal or a satellite signal, what these apps are claiming to do. So number one, the devices themselves are not mechanically able to do what the apps claim they can do. Number two, if the apps were legitimate, they would not be a 99-cent or free download.
Do you know something? I remember years ago when that first came out, my son got it up on his telephone, and we were laughing at it in the kitchen because it's not for what like you say, some people are using it for is for fun.
Right. And, regularly, you'll run into people who are talking, oh, yeah, I was using XYZ Ghost app and, caught this spirit that was standing right in front of me and it said, I am dead. I'm like, really? Okay, show me what you have to validate this experience. Well, it was on the app.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, and I agree. Anything that, if it's on an app, it's garbage. Don't use it, basically. There are app versions of other types of equipment you could buy separately, like EMF meters or whatnot. But even some of this other equipment, I take with a huge grain of salt.
Yeah, but Mark, weren't the EMF meters first designed just to check the electricity for electricians to use and things?
Well, that's the thing. With paranormal research over the years, almost all of the equipment that we use and is available for paranormal research was originally designed and built for something completely different. And we have found, or people have found over the years, that they think they've had some success with picking up the paranormal with it. And perfect example would be digital audio recorders, okay, or even the old micro cassette recorders. Those were all designed and built for like students or people in corporate meetings. You want to record notes and whatnot. And then it was suddenly discovered back in the 50s and 60s. There was a European gentleman who was experimenting with recording, and he was one of the first people who recorded EVPs. But that term wasn't even coined until the 1980s or 90s. Hell, I remember getting my first EVP on a cassette recorder from a recorder I bought at Radio Shack.
Yep.
And
it's like orbs and cameras, isn't it? Once the digital cameras came out, there's bloody orbs everywhere.
Yeah, digital cameras seem really prone more than film cameras for picking up the orbs.
Yeah.
And, I still love debunking orbs when somebody takes a picture and they go, oh, my God, look, I got 1 million orbs. And I turn on my flashlight and I go, look in the beam. See all that crap floating through it? Those are your orbs.
Yeah, it's like sunlight. When it's shining a beam of sunlight through the window, you see all the dust flying around in the room, don't you?
Yeah, and then you realize,
fantastic.
Oh my God, I'm breathing that crap?
Yeah.
Right?
But so all these apps, like, they're the EMF meters, of course, based off of real EMF meters. And then, even then, an EMF meter, you got to be careful with. And one of the things that I was lucky enough when we had our team, first formed our team well over 12 years ago, we had an engineer on our team who could explain what the equipment does. And, meters like the K2 meter, when those first came out, everybody was grabbing a K2 meter. Well, first of all, they're not calibrated, and they're a single axis meter, where for real true calibration, you need to pick up the tri-field meter or similar tri-axis meter that's measuring in 3 directions. Because you hold the K2, you can hold in one direction and maybe get a little spike, but then you just turn it 45 degrees and it's not getting anything. You have to hold it in the right position to pick up something. And, of course, I always laughed at ghost hunters when they came out and they were having conversations and with the K2 meter, and it would light up answering questions, until I quickly realized that, if you stand away and key a microphone on a radio, on a two-way radio, every time you keyed it, it would spike that EMF meter. So
I was just about to comment on that, because you would see them, doing these Q&A sessions with the K2 meter, and you would see one of them sitting there, with their walkie-talkie in their hand. They'd be just, like shaking it or waving it or what have you. And so all they have to be is off camera and key up that microphone, and it'll
one of their producers offline, stepping back behind and keying it and making it seem like, Not that I'm claiming that ghost hunters faked anything.
Oh no! None of the TV shows would ever fake anything.
No, not ghost hunters. I mean, Jason Hawes. Well, he doesn't like me for a reason, because I called him out on it. Anyway, Yeah, so there's that type of equipment. There's, I mean, look, we use one of our most commonly used tools is a night vision camera. You know, and cameras, you know, they started carrying night vision, and again, never designed for paranormal research. But then when paranormal got big, they started, you know, producing better night vision cameras, and you know, I've caught some interesting things on night vision camera. I've also caught a lot of dust orbs too. So it's being able to determine what you're capturing and understanding how a camera works in general. Like most people who get a camera don't understand that camera has a focal plane. It has a focal point where the camera lens, which is comprised of multiple lenses, and most people don't even know this, you know, and that bends the light and reflects it into the image processor in the camera. And, you know, when you look at the camera lens, it starts off as a big wide angle, and then it goes down to the focal point, to the point where it's the most perfect in focus. Then you go beyond that point, it starts getting out of focus again. So you get a speck of dust floating up an inch in front of the camera lens. It's out of focus, so this little speck suddenly turns into this giant orb floating past. And then you only see it because the camera light, even the infrared light, is bouncing off of it because it's an inch away.
Well, it's the same with insects, isn't it?
Yeah.
My CCTV camera, one of my CCTV cameras, I've got a little tiny, minute spider living right near the lens. Honestly, he is gigantic and pure white when he comes out. Absolutely fantastic to watch. But, you know, you see these little white insects flying by and things like that. People say, no, it's fairy, it's fairy. It's a bloody insect. For some reason, it makes them white, pure white.
Well, yeah, because it's the infrared light is bouncing off of the body and coming back. It's like shining a bright light at somebody, even though it's infrared. That's what it's picking up. You'll notice on all the ghost shows too. Like anybody who wears a black shirt, when in infrared, it's white. Because the infrared, it's totally reflecting back the infrared light. You get a little black bug walking across, that light hits it, it's going to be super bright.
Yeah, definitely.
I hope we're not talking too much for you tonight, Clarissa, because
no, you're hitting all of my talking points. So
sorry. We're shut up now.
Asking you the questions and you're answering for me just fine. So.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
We'll let you get on with it now, Clarissa. We'll sit back and listen to you.
I realize as we're sitting here talking, it's like, oh my God, we're talking and we're not letting Clarissa talk, and she's the guest. Bad.
We do rattle on.
Yeah.
We do rattle on.
It happens. It happens. That's what happens when like-minded people, you know, enter into a conversation.
Yep. Well, you know,
this is why I want to buy your book, because it's really is my type of reading. Definitely is.
Well, what about other types of equipment? Like, do you look at things like REM pods or Ovilus or anything that, you know, they are supposedly designed for paranormal investigation by these engineers like Bill Chappell or Gary Galka?
You know, we do look at the random word generators and, you know, and essentially, you know, and in the book, we're very careful not to name anything by name.
Right.
You know, just because, you know, I don't want Billy Chappell trying to slap me with a lawsuit. But, you know, we do have, you know, a section on the random word generators. And, you know, the Ovilus isn't the only one out there. There are others. And, you know, it's kind of a buyer beware. You know, you really need to take a look at, you know, what it is you're purchasing, and you need to understand exactly what it does. And there are some people that are, you know, very, very strong advocates for the random word generators, going, well, you know, I had this experience and I had this experience, and they don't do that. You know, it's not programmed into their database. Well, actually it is. And some of them, the newer models, even have a GPS feature on them, which a lot of people don't realize or understand. And, even some of the apps, going back to the apps, they have a GPS feature on there. So if you were to say, go to the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River, Massachusetts, and you're using one of the random word generators with a GPS, it's a hidden GPS feature, or using one of the apps, that has the hidden GPS feature, it's going to go, oh, you're at the Lizzie Borden house. And so it's going to start tossing you words like axe and Lizzie and murder and things like that. So, people, when they are looking at purchasing a piece of equipment, they really, really need to look at, what it is that they want, what they hope to accomplish with it, and would that piece of equipment serve those needs.
Well, like with a random word generator, what I don't understand is, what is the trigger? What is it using? What is it supposedly sensing to randomly pick some word out of a database? Because the device has to be keyed off of something. And if is it electromagnetic fields? Is it, I don't know, temperature? What are the factors that make that device suddenly want to randomly pick a word?
Well, and the one that we actually have one on the team, one of my investigators got one for Christmas a couple of years ago. And, her husband, thinking he was earning serious brownie points, got her one for Christmas. And, that one, it does have an internal EMF meter. It will give a readout, an EMF readout on the screen as it's operating. And so, it's possible, that the concept behind it is that, a fluctuation in EMF, can cause it to trigger, and supposedly, the spirit providing that EMF fluctuation is, trying to manipulate the device in order to communicate. I haven't ever had any conclusive experience with that. Did have really funny experience with it, though. About a year ago, we were investigating, and whenever the device was brought over to one specific investigator, the automatic setting for it is a male voice speaking in English. That's the default. So whenever we move this one specific indicator, it would suddenly change to female and start speaking Spanish.
Huh.
And what's even funnier is, I know I speak a little bit of Spanish, and it was actually swearing at her, and it would say a word, and I would start laughing. She's like, "What did it say?" But you take the device away from her, and it would revert back to the default setting, male voice speaking English. Well, this person, as it turns out, generates a really high level of EMF themselves. She goes through cell phones about every 4 months and can't wear wristwatches. She just, her body's natural EMF, she fries them. And so it was really funny to go over to her with this, with this little piece of equipment and have it start calling her the B word in Spanish, as a female voice, and and be like, okay, this isn't paranormal in nature. This is Sarah's, own EMF, causing the device to malfunction. And it was a lot of fun. It made for a really enjoyable 30 minutes or so during that investigation.
Now, is Sarah sensitive or even psychic?
No, she's not.
But just her natural EMF would throw off that device. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we have to be careful with the REM pod around her also, because if she gets too close to the REM pod, it'll trip.
And again, I don't own a REM pod. I never wanted to spend the $100 or more on one. So what is it supposed to be reading? Is it just electromagnetic fields?
It's electromagnetic and static. So whenever there is a change in the electromagnetic or the static energy in the immediate vicinity. It'll sound a tone or flash some lights or both, depending on what setting you have it on. And the closer or stronger that change is to the, the louder and stronger, the response will be from the device. I'm not a huge fan of it because just like the K2, anything can trip it off. Baby monitor in a nearby building, or a cell phone or a walkie-talkie, anything can trip the REM pod. So it's one of those pieces of equipment that we don't use very often.
Now for me, part of my toolbox that I use, I
was just going to say this.
Oh, go ahead. What were you going to say?
Ghost box.
Well, there's the ghost box. Actually, I wasn't going to mention the ghost box, but
sorry.
No, but and actually that's an even better analogy. The so-called ghost box or spirit box, the SB7, which a lot of people just don't understand, that it just scans regular AM and FM frequencies. And if you don't purposely go in and rip out the antenna, you will get every radio station around. In fact, even if you rip out the antenna, the device is still worthless if you're in an urban setting, because it's going to pick up radio stations. Now, if you're maybe out in the middle of nowhere,
or underground,
mm-hmm. I used one once when I was in the middle of a cave where I was 50 feet under solid rock, and about 100 yards away from the entrance, around several corners. So there should theoretically be no radio signals. And we kept getting a little bit of something that sounded like old-time music and a very faint voice. But, I still am not 100% convinced that, because, some radio signals can travel through some solid rock. And
it depends on the composite of the rock that you're in also. If there's a high volume of quartz in the rock itself, those radio waves are going to are going to transmit through that, because quartz is actually used in older model radios.
It's a transmitter in itself, isn't it?
Because they have that natural ability to transmit radio waves. So you got to look at if you're in an underground setting, you need to look at the geological content of the ground that you're in. If there's a high volume of quartz, you're going to get radio waves.
Now, what are your thoughts on thermal imaging? Like the FLIR thermal imaging cameras, and people using the thermal cameras to try to record different types of anomalies?
I think that thermal imaging is a very useful tool. I have never had the money to invest in one. And so I haven't been able to experiment with one. But I think if used properly, they could potentially be a pretty valuable tool. One thing that people often neglect is that, heat is energy, just like light is and electricity is. It's all energy. And so it will trap a person standing near a wall, and then that person moves, and then a few seconds later you sweep the area where that person was standing. There's still going to be a person-shaped heat signature in that area, because that person was transferring that heat, that thermal energy, just as people do every second of every day. And so, it's like you have to have a healthy dose of skepticism, and you really need to be good and thorough at debunking when you're operating that. It's the same with the SLS cameras. We have 3. Believe it or not, we have 3 SLS cameras on the team. We have 2 of the Kinect and 1 of the XCam. And, I've spent the better part of this summer working to debunk the SLS cameras and everything. I've had a couple of experiences that I cannot debunk yet, but a lot of the positive hits that these SLS cameras get are simply operator error.
And with these SLS cameras, I built my own out of an old Xbox Kinect, and I haven't gotten to use it a lot lately. But when you have a device that is specifically designed to map the human form and have it appear on screen, because that's how it's used to play games, it's going to do its best to try to map a human form everywhere. Right. And, I've gotten false positives pointing it at my guitars, and the guitar neck looks like a body, and it maps it. And, anybody who didn't know any better would think, oh my God, look, there's something across the room. Yeah, it's my, Martin guitar sitting in its stand.
Right.
So,
and it's mechanical pareidolia. It's the device receiving pieces of incomplete data and trying to make a rational conclusion out of that incomplete data. But again, I have had a couple of instances where I have had hits on the SLS that I cannot debunk. 3 come to mind, actually. But for the most part, I can chalk up, most of the SLS anomalies that it detects, as operator error or mechanical pareidolia.
Now, we mentioned thermal cameras earlier. I just wanted to, this is going to sound like a sales pitch here, but FLIR, which specializes in making thermal cameras, they have a new one out. It's been out for about the last year, called the FLIR 1, which is extremely affordable. Because one of my old team members used to have a $10,000 FLIR camera that he happened to get through his work because it was broke, and they, instead of getting it fixed, they wanted to buy a new one. So they gave it to him. He spent the money to fix it, and he got a $10,000 camera out of it. But FLIR has realized, I think, with the new technology, they have what they call now the FLIR 1. It's only about $100, and it actually works with your mobile phone or tablet. It'll work with both iPhone or Android, depending on, you have to order one for one or the other. And it uses, it has an app that you download too, but it uses both your camera's imagery and the sensor and creates a really crisp looking thermal picture that is very accurate. And I've been testing it out for the last year, and it's a phenomenal camera, and has record capabilities and everything too. So that's something you might want to look into.
I may have to. And if it's as inexpensive as you say it is, that's right up my alley. So,
yeah.
being a poor starving writer, and I'll suggest to all of your listeners, please buy my book so I can afford this piece of equipment.
There you go. Sell like 5 books and you'll be able to afford it.
No, I have to sell closer to 100.
Oh yeah, that's right. Thanks for Amazon.
I could be able to afford it, because I have to split the royalties with Chris on this one. So,
well, tell them you both need, you need equipment. If you're making an investment into the team.
Yeah.
There you go. Now, with your own investigations, I'd be interested to hear a little bit more about the types of investigations that you've been on, or some of the experiences you've had. Is there anything that, I know we're talking about, paranormal pareidolia, but and you've mentioned some great examples, but have you also had some experiences that you really can't explain?
Oh, yeah. Having been doing this for over 20 years now, my experiences are numerous. And it's funny how, as an investigator, you gain experiences and you grow and you learn and everything. And so experiences that you had, a decade ago, you can go back and debunk them now, which kind of takes some of the steam out. But, you still have this really cool, memory of, being excited and being happy and, jazzed that you had this experience. But then again, there are others that you just cannot explain. You cannot debunk them. no matter how hard you try. And there are a few of those in my portfolio, if you will, in my memory banks. And so I get frequently asked, what was your first experience? What was your scariest experience? What was your best experience? And you kind of get tired of telling the same story over and over again. But I guess I'll tell you one we had about, I guess it was about 10 years ago now. And I still cannot debunk this one. And we were investigating a mansion here it was in central Colorado, and the gentleman who built the mansion was of German descent. And so at one point in the evening, there were probably 8 of us on scene that night. It was a 3-story mansion. There were probably 8 of us that night, and we had broken off into teams. And I myself speak pretty decent German, and one of the other investigators also spoke German, and he and his team were down in the basement, and I and my team were on one of the upper floors. And at the same time, we had the tech center validate, with the DVR system. At the same time, this other investigator and I both started asking the same EVP questions in German. And, it was a conscious decision that I made, to start trying to communicate, in German. It's like, the gentleman that built this house, was of German descent, I'll ask EVP questions in German. And it was the same case with that other investigator. He went, maybe if I asked some EVP questions in German. We were asking the same questions in German at the same time. And within a few minutes of that, and it was myself and 2 brand new, very green rookie investigators. It was probably their first or second case. I don't remember exactly without having the notes in front of me. But we were seated on a sofa, and across the room there was a love seat facing us. And this very well-dressed gentleman walked into the room and sat down on the love seat opposite us. And the 2 really green rookie investigative fingernails dug into my arms, and he didn't acknowledge us. So as I'm prying their nails out of my skin, I'm trying to talk to him very calmly in English, trying to engage him in conversation. And we got no response from him. And I called the other team on the radio, and I said, you may want to come up here quietly, don't come in through this entrance, use the kitchen entrance. And, and we heard them, coming up very quietly, and as they were entering the room, another very brand new, very green investigator flipped on the lights, and he vanished, he disappeared. But what the 3 of us did was we went to a neutral investigator, someone who hadn't been in the room, and I described the man, in detail, about how tall he was, what he looked like, and all of our stories matched. So we all had the same experience.
So just to clarify, you all saw a full-bodied apparition walk into the room, sit down, and sit across from you for how long?
It was a good 2 to 3 minutes.
Wow.
It was not very long at all. But 2 to 3 minutes, in a paranormal setting can seem like an eternity. And of course, he was out of range of our cameras. We had cameras pointed in just about every angle except at that love seat.
Now, how far away was he sitting from you?
Probably, let's see, how tall am I? So if I were to lay on probably 8 to 10 feet.
Really? So, and the reason I'm asking this is, in all the years that I've been doing this, I have never seen an apparition, full-bodied or not.
That's the only one I've seen two. The first one was the one that got me started on this journey, and then there was that one. And it was definitely something to write home about. But to this day, I cannot debunk it, especially since the three of us went to, a neutral party who was not in the room with us, and all three of us independently described what we saw, and all of our stories matched.
It's phenomenal. I'm jealous because I've had experiences from hearing things to feeling things. Oh my God, I've gone into some locations and the energy in the location seems to be off the hook. And, you could feel it come and go. But there's also a danger of that. If you don't understand what it is you're feeling, people can misinterpret that. That could be a form of pareidolia.
Yes, it can. It can. When you're in a potentially paranormal situation, all of your senses are heightened. Especially if you rob yourself of sight. In the dark. So all of your other senses, your sense of touch, all of those are going to heighten.
Now, there have been cases where over the years I've learned to trust what I'm feeling and understanding the kind of reactions that my body gives me to give me information on a location. In fact, I consider it my most important paranormal research tool, because while it's not going to collect any evidence that you could show somebody else, I trust the sensations that I will feel in terms of all of a sudden feeling like my heart starts racing for no reason, or feel not a temperature change, but like an electricity in the air. And you could feel when these things come into a room, and then when they leave too. And then when they leave, everything feels perfectly normal. We had one case where we had teams on every floor in this building, and all of a sudden one team would feel it come into their room, and then another team, just as it would leave the room, and before that team could tell everybody else that it left the room, somebody else would get on the radio and say, "Yeah, now it's here." And we were able to track its movements from room to room as it was checking us out. Again, it's not scientific. You can't back it up. It only documented as an experience, but still, I still feel it's a good way of tracking and understanding some of what you're experiencing there, especially when it comes to stray emotions, things that come out of nowhere. Like I was with a group one time, and all of a sudden I just started crying for no reason, and I'm going, what the hell am I crying for? And I only cried when I stood in this one spot, and if I took 2 or 3 steps either way, I'd stop crying. If I walked back into that spot, I started crying again, and I'm looking around at everybody and going, what the hell?
Yeah, and I had a similar experience a few years ago. One of my investigators, Susan, she and I were in Tombstone, Arizona, and we were investigating the Watt and Tarbell Undertaker building. And, we're going about our business, doing everything, by the book as usual, very routine. And I have no idea what was funny. And she's asking me, she's like, what's so funny? I'm like, I have no idea, but I was laughing so hard. I had tears running down my face. I could not stop laughing. Something was very, very, very funny. And talking to, the proprietors of the building, they said that actually happens quite a bit, that people will just spontaneously burst into laughter for no reason and nobody can explain it. And so, that was one of those cases, where the quote unquote empath abilities kind of kicked in, and something was funny, and I don't know what it was. Maybe they were laughing at us, or maybe they were just a very jovial, happy person when we're little. Or I can't, but I just burst into hysterical laughter, and Susan's looking at me like, "What did you smoke?" And it's like I really didn't. I'm stone cold sober, I swear, and But it was funny, and it's still funny to this day because I can't explain why I was laughing.
Well, there's people that would say that you're actually taking on the essence of the spirit of whatever is there at the time that was laughing. You know, understand? Do you understand?
Yeah, I can see how they would say that.
Yeah.
I don't particularly
go on that.
Yeah, go on that because you know, if you were to walk into a room and everybody is hysterically laughing, even if you don't know what's funny, you know, you watch them laughing long enough, you know, you're gonna start laughing, and so, you know, it could have been something as simple as that, you know, even though I couldn't physically see or hear, you know, somebody else laughing, you know, I was picking up on it, and ultimately I started laughing even though I didn't know what was funny.
Yeah, but like I say, most people would turn around and say there was a spirit impressing it on you, but I'm not so sure. You know, I've actually been in my kitchen and had a funny moment where I've just burst out laughing for no reason. And I had to think to myself, oh, what the hell am I laughing at? But I felt good about laughing, so I laughed, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, laughter is always good. You know, yeah. I would rather laugh than cry.
Yeah.
So.
And it's like Mark says about your emotions and one thing or another. Your gut feeling that you get is one of the most important things, I think. You know, if there's danger around, if you're walking along the street and there's somebody standing in the shadows or something you haven't noticed, you get that gut feeling that something's going to happen. And it's, you know, it is to me, that is one of the most important things. But it doesn't always mean to say that it is paranormal.
Right.
It's like people were saying about, what was it, on Most Haunted? There was a spate of things on Most Haunted once where they were checking out EMF for people feeling sick and feeling disorientated and things like that. And it was, they were putting that down to EMF spikes and one thing or another, you know?
Well, you know, some people can be sensitive to EMF, but it's also not as often as they try to say. And, you know, kind of getting back to when we were talking about all the equipment, there's still no proof that spirits or paranormal activity has any effect on electromagnetic fields. We just think they do. But there's no hardcore proof. In fact, to be quite honest, there's no hardcore proof of anything. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, but when you get right down to it, there's nothing that we could ever do or produce is going to prove that spirits exist, ghosts exist, or even the paranormal exists. Not by current scientific method, anyway.
Yet.
Well, let me put it to you this way. We probably have some technology to prove it, but it'll never see the light of day, because if you prove it, then it's the social upset, and it'll throw society into chaos. Just like they'll never. I kind of chuckle at my friends in the UFO community who are always screaming disclosure. It's like, it ain't ever going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
Because if they admit it, then they have to admit they've been lying to us this whole time, and they have no control over it. These things are much more superior, and then we look pretty stupid, and then there's going to be widespread panic. So, no, it'll never happen. So, anywho, what other types of myths? Is there anything else? Have we covered the gamut of the pareidolia? Do you have other types of examples on paranormal pareidolia?
Let's see. I've got the book right here in front of me, so let me take a look here. We touched on optical illusions in the book, you know, and as we talked about earlier in the show, you know, someone can see one thing and interpret it to be something, and somebody can see something else and interpret it to be something else. And it's like the traditional Rorschach test. We actually put the most popular Rorschach ink blot in the book. We put that image in the book, and we've had, interviews, where the show host will be like, okay, you look at that image, Chris, what do you see? And Chris goes, well, I see an ink blot. And okay, Clarissa, what do you see? I'm like, well, I see Ozzy Osbourne dancing on a stripper pole. And so it's the same thing with a lot of the shadow imagery and photography and stuff like that. People are like, oh yeah, I clearly see a person, and oh well, I see a dog, and things like that. It's subject to interpretation, and it's all subject to pareidolia, because there is no clear-cut answer for what that image is.
Well, I know that there are a lot of researchers who are really big into ITC. Mm-hmm. And that's one of those that just screams to me, that's ripe for pareidolia. Because what are you looking at? You're looking at either snow on a TV or a feedback image on a TV doing all these weird shapes. And just like seeing elephants in the clouds, every now and then a shape is going to take a shape that you might think your brain is trying to interpret that, oh, I see a face.
Right. And, I have a big problem with ITC, particularly with one. There's a bottom dweller out there who has gained a lot of fame and notoriety for their attempts at ITC communication with the very, very, very recently departed. And, when you're doing ITC work or spirit box work or what have you, especially, when you have someone of celebrity status who has very recently passed, all of those radio frequencies and such, just a couple of weeks ago, we lost Burt Reynolds. And, and sure enough, that yellow-bellied sapsucker, I know Irene's very fond of that phrase.
I love it.
was on their YouTube channel, attempting to make contact with Mr. Burt Reynolds. And
I think I've heard of, sorry, Clarissa, I think I've heard of this bloke. It is a man, isn't it? But I'm not going to name him because I'm not going to give him any notoriety.
Yeah, I won't even identify their gender. That's how little I think of them. But what the general public fails to realize is that in the hours following that celebrity's passing, all of the media stations, whether they're television or radio or internet or what have you, everybody's going to be talking about that celebrity.
That's so it. And everything he's done,
at spirit box communication, you're going to get responses such as Bandit or Bert or, and so, pertaining to Mr. Burt Reynolds, of course, because everybody will be, was talking about him. And so, this individual goes on their YouTube channel, with their grand device, and, I'm trying to reach the spirit of Burt Reynolds, and then they get a hit, that says Burt or Bandit or what have you. And it misleads the public into believing that they are communicating with that person. So number one, it's number two, it is so disrespectful, not necessarily to the person that has passed, but to their family who just hours ago lost their loved one. And then this idiot is out there with their grand device, trying to, claiming that they are communicating with that person. It's
sickening.
It's disrespectful.
That's what it is. It is disrespectful. I'd hate for that to happen.
It's disgusting.
I'd hate for that to happen to my family. If we lost somebody, next thing, 5 minutes later, someone's saying that they're blooming communicating with them.
Yeah, we actually had some former guests, and I'm not going to mention names, that do that on the psychic level, where they get on there. I mean, literally, they're not even cold, and they do a show where they're channeling this woman's son who talks to the person's spirit who dies, and it's like God Almighty, the families hasn't even buried them yet, and they're out there doing videos on this subject, like, we're trying to contact the spirit of so and so. Well, you know what? If I just kicked,
what that was the woman's got a son that's on the other side who works as a spirit worker through a medium who's usually a friend of the woman.
So she thinks.
Yeah.
So she thinks.
Yeah.
So, there's no proof. She's just a desperate, grieving mother. And, it's sickening how these people jump on it. I was saying, if I just kicked, I'm still going to be comprehending my situation. I'm not going to want to stop and have a chat. Somebody goes, Mark, come in, tell us how you feel. My first words are, what the fuck happened?
Well, I'll tell you something, sweetie. I won't even bother talking to you. I've had enough of talking to you in this life, let alone on the other side as well.
Oh, that can be remedied. I don't have to wait until I croak for that one. Besides, you're going first.
No, I mean, and within our own community, this person, when a couple of years ago, with the very, very, very tragic deaths of Mark and Debbie Constantino.
Oh yeah.
Within 90 minutes.
Now I know
the
who
news
you're
breaking.
talking about.
Yeah, within 90 minutes of the news breaking, this bottom dweller was on their device, with cameras rolling, recording to their YouTube channel, trying to make contact with Mark and Debbie, and I was livid. It's been years and I'm still livid.
Yeah.
Having met and known and interviewed Mark and Debbie, I mean,
they were nice, they were nice people.
But, you don't know what's going on in people's private lives and whatever was happening there, but that was such a tragedy.
It really was. And I miss them terribly. Both of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
they were very nice people, and I remember that happening, and I remember that being all over Facebook, people creating about that.
Then people say, because of their EVPs, they're probably possessed by the demonic and cause them to do all. It's like,
or because of their work and their research that legitimizes what that individual was doing, less than 2 hours after their passing.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
No. Absolutely.
I remember that. I do remember that Pratt. And he is a Pratt as well.
So, and heaven forbid you cannot say anything negative publicly about this individual because they will sue you.
That's why he's a Pratt.
Yeah.
And that's another. I wouldn't even give him the honor of mentioning his bloody name.
I won't even identify their gender.
I think I know who it is, but I'm not 100% sure.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure most of your listeners do by now as well.
Oh, probably. Probably. Oh, well, in any case. So, between ITC, other types of paranormal equipment, ITC there's so much out there that is just ripe for misuse or misunderstanding. And most people don't understand how the equipment works to begin with. We mentioned earlier about how equipment most of it was designed for other uses, and we incorporated into paranormal. But the fact is, when we come into this field, unfortunately, most of us, especially in Western society, are conditioned from a very young age to think we understand what ghosts and spirits are. And that comes from a lot of the Victorian age and the spiritualist movement, and how we look at the ghosts and spirits of the dead, people who died, maybe they haven't crossed over. We think of going to the light. All these stories that we hear really got their popularity 100 years ago, back in the end of the Victorian era, when the spiritualist movement was happening. And so that's how we look at spirits and ghosts these days, when the truth is we really still don't know. And a lot of the activity, I've worked on several cases now where I was convinced that yes, there's something going on, and no, it's not human. What it is, I can't rightfully say. I have some ideas, but you know what? Even then, I'm falling back on what other people have talked about and mentioned and have never proven. If you start talking about, non-human entities, interdimensional beings, there's no way to prove any of that. But what you're dealing with is definitely not human. It's not acting human. It's not. It has an intelligence to it that does not appear like it's just a person having a bad day or throwing a tantrum. And I don't like the word demons, and I don't believe, quote unquote, in demons per se, but I do feel that there are some types of intelligences. I mean, it's hard to even call them entities. Some types of intelligences you're dealing with that just don't really quite fit into any mold.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, I think that's the ultimate goal of the serious and legitimate researchers out there, is to try to find some of those answers. I know all of us deep down want to find all of the answers, but, it's just like with any other area of research, whether it's scientific or pseudoscience, you work the theories, sometimes, one door opens, another door closes. You've got, roads and side roads and footpaths and sometimes one leads to another, sometimes it leads to a dead end. And so you just keep going and exploring and researching, and we keep doing what we do. And hopefully someday, we'll have maybe a slightly better understanding.
Well, speaking of understanding, what are your own thoughts on when you've been investigating the paranormal for 20 years. Mm-hmm. So what are your thoughts on the paranormal? What do you think that you're dealing with in most cases where you feel like you're actually experiencing paranormal activity?
It's circumstantial. It depends on the circumstances. There are times where I am firmly convinced that we're dealing with the soul or spirit or remnant energy of a living person who has passed. There are other times where, and granted, these are very, 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 very few and very, 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 very rare, contrary to what you see on TV, where, what we're dealing with could be something that has never possessed a human body or had human emotions, or it's been so long that they've lost their humanity, if you will. And then there are other cases where it's like, okay, maybe this is some sort of interdimensional being, or even extraterrestrial, or, something that we have absolutely no ability to comprehend and understand. It depends on the data that we have before us. What have we gathered? What can we interpret from this data? And I don't ever use the terms evidence or proof. Evidence is something that you present in court, and it can be proven. What we have is data, and sometimes data can be proven, and sometimes it can be disproven. And sometimes, you spend decades researching it, trying to prove or disprove it. And it just remains data. And so it depends on, what you have in front of you, what your circumstances are, and what data you have in front of you, to try to, derive a a conclusion, if you will, out of what is being experienced. And I will be perfectly honest, my favorite cases are the ones where I can go in and debunk everything and say, okay, this is not paranormal in nature. This is, there is a rationally occurring explanation for all of this, which I know that sounds a little crass, by saying that those are my favorite cases. But in reality, if I have a client to whom I'm providing a service, it puts their minds at ease, makes them feel more comfortable in their personal space when we can go in and debunk everything. But it also makes the events when we capture potentially paranormal data, it makes those instances that much sweeter and that much more rewarding. Whereas if we're of the mindset where everything is paranormal, if everything is paranormal, then why are we studying it? And, why are we researching it? Oh, okay. Well, it's another ghost. Okay. Such is life.
So true. So true. Well said. That was very well said.
So many people get into the quote unquote paranormal because they want proof of the afterlife. And let's face it, we're all going to die. It all scares the crap out of us. And And, we just we're looking for either reassurance or that there's going to be something after this life, whether you have religious beliefs or not. But for me, when I first started it, that's where I found my journey starting. But over the years, it's morphed into something much different. And I blame Irene for most of this because, she's such an influence, bad influence half the time. But
why?
Hey, me.
But
what have I done now?
No, nothing. It's just our conversations. It's the things that we've been looking into, going from just looking at the paranormal, like haunted places, a ghost or a spirit, somebody who's died, to dealing with different types of phenomenon. Anything from, we talk about interdimensional time slips.
Yeah.
There's also the idea of overlapping type of phenomenon. In the past, I've dealt with several years back. I'm also very interested in ufology. Or in cryptids and a lot of different other types of phenomenon. And yet I know ghost hunters who actually got upset one time with me because I looked at UFOs and they go, how can you do that? How can you look into that crap? Nobody will take us seriously if we look into that. Nobody will take a ghost hunter upset that they won't be taken seriously if you look into UFOs. Pot, kettle. Yeah. But they're so narrow-minded. They're only focusing on the one phenomenon. And what we've found over the years in our research is that there's a lot of overlapping type of phenomena. People have been reporting, people who are having, let's say, UFO or ET experiences or abduction experiences report poltergeist types of phenomenon.
And vice versa.
This one case that I dealt with here in New Jersey. We started off thinking it was a regular haunting. Then we morphed into thinking it was something on the land, possibly inhuman. My client called me up one morning freaking out, thinking I was going to think she was crazy because she saw something in her room that night. And I go, what? And she didn't want to tell me. I had to coax it out of her. She goes, Mark, it was a flippin' alien. She thought she saw a creature that looked like an alien, or at least what she interpreted looked like an alien. Tall, thin, big eyes. And, is it an overlapping type of phenomenon, or is it a misidentified type of phenomenon?
Right.
Those are the types of things that we're just not sure of.
Now, do you ever get the clients that are angry when you're able to go in and debunk everything that they've experienced? And they are just absolutely sure that it's the work of a ghost, or I've got a really good story with this one.
Clarissa, half of them want it to be something paranormal.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, we get them all right.
Yeah.
I was called into a case in Connecticut about 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago now. And I was called in by another team. So I packed up my bags and I flew to the East Coast and worked this case in Connecticut. And the video footage of this is absolutely hysterical because one of the things that they reported was hearing footsteps in the main hallway of the house. And so there's video footage of me squirreling on my hands and knees all over this hardwood floor, which I was able to deduce was actually the boards, these I think they were 110 years old at the time, 110-year-old floorboards expanding and contracting and popping each other as the heating system turned on, so the house would heat up, and then the heating system would shut off and the house would cool down. And so, the floorboards would expand and contract and pop each other sequentially as, going down the hallway. And it would sound like someone was walking on the floor. And the team that had called me in had a quote unquote psychic that told the clients that the inexplicable bruises on the inner thighs of the teenage daughter were the result of an incubus. And I was able to uncover in a 20-minute interview with that teenage daughter. So, you bring your findings to the client, who's already been told by one team that, that there is a portal in the bedroom. No, it's not a portal. It's a really, really old stereo system, generating EMF. That's why all the EMF meters were going off and going crazy. It's not a portal. It's really old electronic equipment. The result of an incubus, but are the result of teenage hormones. And this client, and again, this was in Connecticut, but the woman of the house was from New Jersey. So you can imagine, Mark, I don't know if you can, Irene, but you can imagine, Mark, the rage that I was met with, when I'm presenting paranormal rational, 8:00 in the morning, and this woman is screaming at me. Because I went in and debunked everything, and how dare you come into my house and say these things, and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, you need to have a talk with your daughter. Yep. And it's not ghostly. It's not extraterrestrial. There is no portal. It's, this is what it is. And needless to say, I promptly packed up my equipment and went. But where clients are because we've debunked, what they were paranormal in nature, or they're upset because we're not going to put them on television.
Yeah, they're looking for their 15 minutes of fame. They're looking for the 15 minutes of fame. They've watched one too many ghost shows. And the problem that we run into here, especially in America, and Irene talk about it all the time, is how everything over here.
I talk about it all the time.
No, you and I talk about the fact that in America, it's always demons all the time.
Oh, yes. Demons in America, yes. Ghosts in England.
Yep.
Ghosts in the UK, demons in America.
Yep. So, I've dealt with clients who literally have watched not only too many ghost shows, but I found out doing one investigation how the mother was literally on the computer every single day with California psychics. And everything was so involved in psychics, and they just so wanted to believe their house was haunted and that their teenager was being possessed when basically he was going through puberty and he was being a little shithead. So I mean, and the people they just get so angry at you when you're not telling them what they want to hear. We also had a recent case too where, unfortunately, and this is where I get so irritated with these so-called psychics who go with paranormal teams, and they just scare the crap out of clients, or they tell them all this, what's your term, Irene? Hairy-fairy BS.
Hairy-fairy BS, yeah.
About you've got portals in the basement. You got 20 portals in your house. You have this, you have that. And you know what? And they just get the people so worked up because they don't have to prove it. They just have to say it. And then the people are in awe that, oh my God, I got 20 portals in my house. Now,
I got more than you.
But, recently we did an investigation which we were trying to help this older woman who she was convinced there was something in her house that she couldn't sleep. She was a duplex. She was living next door with her daughter. Her daughter and her family was next door, but she was living all alone. Her husband had passed a few years ago. She's in her 80s, and she was too afraid to sleep in the house anymore, and things started happening. And we looked into it, and in investigating it, we came in very scientifically, and we explained things to her very scientifically, down to earth, matter of fact, what we were looking for. And we suspected a lot of it had to do with her age, maybe thinking about her husband who had been gone for a while. We asked if anything had happened in the house in the last year. Nothing really happened, and her daughter was afraid that maybe she was getting a little bit of dementia. And in talking with her, no, we didn't feel that. But then when we went in and did the investigation, we didn't get any real evidence. Yet there were a couple times that night we felt a very strong presence. So we couldn't really validate anything, but I did feel there was something there, but it didn't feel malevolent in any way. But the idea, we were trying to calm this woman down to be able to go back and stay in her house overnight because she wouldn't stay. And then while we were taking a couple of weeks to review our evidence, I guess her eldest son got impatient, and I was dealing with the daughter. The eldest son got impatient and called in a psychic. Gave her $200 to come in and do a reading on the house and do a house clearing. And she said, oh, yeah, you had portals. You had this spirit here. You had that spirit here. And totally fed this old woman, because the old woman was hanging on every word. She wanted to hear there was something paranormal. She wanted it to be something like this. And I was being very careful in my choice of words to not get her stirred up. Well, what the psychic come in? Completely stirred her up. And but then at the same time, she said, oh, well, she did it, and she crossed them over. And then we found out that the client was comfortable enough to stay in her home. And at that point, I talked to her daughter, and I said, you know what, we're done. We're not going to do anymore, because the daughter really wanted us to come in and look more for investigative. And I said, no, we're done, because the end result was whether or not you pay your brother paid $200 and got ripped off by this psychic to spout a bunch of mumbo jumbo with no proof. And, but the end result was the same. Calm the client down. She's back in her house. Okay, well, there's nothing more we can do to help her.
Yeah.
I'm irritated, and this is why, we have a thing with dealing with clients that we're the only ones that there's to deal with. And if they bring in somebody else from the outside, we're done. Because what if you get somebody who comes in there and actually stirs things up and makes it dangerous?
Right.
But what about the one we done over here in the UK? There was a young girl. She was seeing stuff all over the place. She went to a psychic. The psychic told her that witches had been practicing in her basement under the house. And she believed it. She totally believed it. She never gave one thought to the fact that she didn't have a basement.
Oh, this is an interesting case, Clarissa, you might find, because, she didn't have a basement. But yet she believed that there were witches in the basement. But this was a case we were dealing with somebody who actually had a very strong energy. They're a very fearful person. They believed everything. And it was, how would you call this, Irene? It was a case of thought form energies. She was creating what was in her house. It was all her. You could almost liken it to a poltergeist phenomena, yet she was
she producing it herself.
She was physically manifesting apparitions based off of her own fears and what other people told her, and other people would see it. But there was no spirit in the house. It was her. And after a couple of months of working on the case, and we all started coming to the same conclusion, we realized what was going on. When we tried to tell her about it, oh my God, it was the same reaction that you had with that one case. Oh, she called us a bunch of frauds. She yelled and screamed at us because we didn't tell her what she wanted to hear. Clarissa?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we lost you there for a second.
Nope, we lost you.
No, we lost you. Yeah. We keep losing you. I know it's that storm over there. You're having a very bad storm, aren't you? And that's just what...
Okay, well, I was just telling this story about that case, but it was the same thing,
like a ghost. Poof, he's gone.
The client the client didn't want to believe anything we had to say and got mad at us because we told the truth. So we are coming up here on the end of the show now, Clarissa. Where can people find your book and also learn more about you and your co-author?
Chris and I have a website. It is under construction, but it is still accessible, where you can find the link to buy the book, and it is cccvbooks.weebly.com. Again, it's still under construction, and the Weebly part's going to go away eventually, but right now, cccvbooks.weebly.com is where you can find the link to buy the book. You can find out more about myself and my research by going to www.ccpi-paranormal.com. And, you can always find me on Facebook, Twitter, all the social media sites. I'm everywhere.
Clarissa, is the book on Amazon as well?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so if they can't get it because your site is under construction, they can get it from Amazon.
You can get it on the site. The site is live. It's just not complete.
Oh, I see.
And so you can go to the site, and it's, because it's Chris Carr and myself, cccvbooks.weebly.com. And there's a link there, where you can purchase the book. We're also going to have eventually, I just had surgery a week ago, so I've been very lax in updating the website and getting it finished. But we're also going to have links to my other 5 books on there eventually.
Good.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
But right now you can find the Psychosomatic Pareidolia book on that website. And the purchase link is in there.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure we only covered a small part of what you had to say tonight.
Yeah,
and
that's what happens when
we had quite a few technical difficulties, didn't we, Mark?
Yes, and also 2 show hosts that were chatting didn't know when to shut up.
Especially the portals.
Especially me. Well, Clarissa, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. This was a lot of fun talking with you, and looking forward to reading your book.
Yeah,
my pleasure.
Clarissa, we must have you back at some point so that we can continue this. And maybe you could bring Chris Carr on with you at the same time?
I would love that. He works, he's over in the New England area, and so he works until about 6 o'clock Eastern. And so, getting him for these early interviews is a little tricky, but we could probably get something scheduled, do a pre-recorded show or something with him. That would be a lot of fun. You guys would really enjoy him.
Yeah, maybe we won't have so many technical difficulties that time.
Maybe.
Yeah. Okay, then. Right, so I'll get in touch with you in a couple of weeks over that, if that's okay with you, and
Sure.
we can book you in for some time later in the year. All right.
Or
Yeah,
early
that'd be
next
great.
year. Well, again, thank you so much for coming on. We had a lot of fun talking with you, and want to thank.
We had a lot of balls ups and all, mate.
Yeah, well, that's what editing is for. That's why we're pre-recorded, folks. Anyway, thank you, everybody, for tuning in to another Paranormal UK radio show. And remember, check us out every Wednesday night at 10 p.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Eastern Standard Time here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And we can also be heard where, Irene?
Everywhere, people, everywhere.
Okay. So thanks a lot, everyone, and have a great evening.
Okay, night-night.
Night-night.
Are you experiencing the strange and paranormal in your home or business? Do you feel that unseen forces are at work around you? Are you looking for answers? Spirit Rescue International is here to help. Spirit Rescue International is a non-profit organization that is dedicated to helping people around the world with their paranormal issues. Our trained team of experienced scientific researchers, psychics, and remote viewers work together to find the root cause of your issue and help find the best solution for our clients. Spirit Rescue International specializes in spirit rescue, helping those lost souls in need to cross over to the other side, as well as clearing negative phenomenon or explaining benign natural forces to ease the minds of our clients. Our team examines all aspects of each individual case discreetly and free of charge. For more information about Spirit Rescue International and our services, please visit our website at www.spiritrescueint.com. That's spiritrescueint.com.
Have you ever seen an alien? Have you ever witnessed Bigfoot or other strange creatures? Have you ever seen a ghost, angel, or other otherworldly beings? Then we want your stories. Paranormal UK Radio Network is looking for people with real-life encounters with the strange and unusual for an upcoming book series. Please visit our website at paranormalukradionetwork.com and click on the link in the menu for Collecting Stories, Strange Encounters, and tell us all about your strange encounters with the unknown. All submissions will be reviewed, and those selected will be appearing in a future publication. Strange Encounters with the Unknown. We want your stories.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air, to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's all here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With the mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find news and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
1 million miles till midnight. A story of timelines, artificial worlds, simulated races, and the galactic imprint. And the destiny of a blue world called Earth. 1 million miles till midnight, written by Solaris Blue Raven, is a journey through the mind's eye which allows the reader to surf a wave of technological and multidimensional intellect, revealing a bridge between conscious design and the truth. A multidimensional bleed-through awakens the world of artificial intelligence to set sail into the frontiers of a vast multiverse, morphing planets and terraforming ascended worlds beyond the linear programs of a fated race. 1 million miles till midnight will awaken, inspire, prepare, and enlighten one to the many multidimensional states of consciousness and worlds we reside in. With every cell and atom, we are this truth and multiverse. 1 million miles till midnight. Written by Solaris Blue Raven. Available now at Amazon.com and GlenNT.com. Don't wait. Get your copy today.
Hello, this is Lord Lewis Smythe, formerly of the House of Lords and World Traveler, and I have visited some of the darkest, scariest places on Earth. But nothing is as frightening as listening to Paranormal UK Radio with the lovely Irene and Mark and that American chap Mark Johnson. So tune in every Wednesday night from 10 to midnight here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. Oops, sorry.
Have you ever wanted to visit the south of Italy? Amalfi, Ravello, Positano, Sorrento, places of immense beauty on the Amalfitana coast. Nearby Vesuvius stands proud against the sky, shadowing the ancient Roman ruins of Pompeii. In the midst of all this beauty lies the picturesque hillside village of Pontoni that dates back to the Middle Ages. Stay in Pontoni, in the self-catering apartments of Il Petrale, the beautiful casa belonging to Carmiana Rispoli, who will warmly welcome you when you arrive. Il Petrale, a haven of peace in the heart of this magnificent place called Pontoni. For more information, email us at carminerispoli@email.it. That's Carmine Rispoli, CarmineRispoli @email.it.
You're listening to the Paranormal UK Radio Network, the best in paranormal talk radio in the UK and around the world.